Balinese Rhythms, Lecture 1, Going Through the Motions. Hello, I'm Evan Ziporyn. I'm a professor of music at MIT, and I've been directing MIT's Balinese gamelan ensemble, Gamelan Galactica, since it was started in 1993. In these next lectures, I'm going to talk to you about various aspects of rhythm and time in Balinese traditional music, that is, in Balinese gamelan. We're going to discuss and demonstrate how Balinese musicians play rhythms on the instruments of the gamelan, and how these rhythms relate to other aspects of Balinese music, to melody, to cycle, and to the overall feel of the music. We'll also talk about how Balinese teachers, composers, and ensemble leaders convey these rhythms, how they teach them, and how members of the ensembles learn them. Most of this we'll simply learn in its own right and for its own sake, but along the way I'll also try to show you ways in which this is particularly distinctive, how Balinese rhythms and the Balinese approach to rhythm differ from the rhythms and rhythmic conceptions of many other cultures, and why I find that interesting and important. My co-teacher for this unit and our hands-on guide to Balinese rhythm is Balinese master musician Dewa Ketut Alit. Dewa Alit is from the village of Pengosekan from a family of musicians. He'll teach you to play these rhythms and in the process how to most effectively relate the rhythms to each other, and ideally, maybe, how you might relate to them yourself. For that, we're going to be using a tool called the gamelan that we've developed specifically for this course. Balinese rhythms are unique not just for how they sound, but for how they're taught, literally the physical way a teacher or a leader passes the music on to a student or a group, as well as the pedagogy that underlies these teaching methods. I'm going to argue that there's a symbiotic relationship between the rhythms themselves and these teaching methods, something Balinese musicians have built into the music and its transmission over many generations, even as the music itself has changed and evolved. So that in the end, there's really no separating them, the rhythms and the teaching method. They're part and parcel. The rhythms themselves, the way they fit into the music as a whole, and the way they're taught and learned. As you'll soon hear, the rhythms and patterns of Balinese music are quite intricate in design and beautiful in sound, simply in their own right. And I also personally believe, quite strongly, that the musicianship required to play them effectively is useful to any musician working in almost any style. That being said, the patterns in themselves are only part of the story. They fit into a much larger musical and cultural matrix. And one of the keys to understanding this is not just to learn these rhythms, though they're very catchy and fun in their own right, but to experience learning them in ways that approach traditional methods. And Dewa Alit has designed his lessons with that in mind. So, okay, a computer keyboard is really not a substitute for a real Balinese gamelan instrument. There's no way around that. But we've worked hard to design the gamelan game and its interface to give you as close a sense as possible to what it's like to be doing just that, to actually learning on an actual instrument, sitting across from an actual teacher. So, I myself became interested in Balinese gamelan in the late 1970s, purely through recordings, talking about good old-fashioned vinyl. And I was fascinated by the music before I could even find Bali on a map. Even finding a teacher to learn from or a group to play with outside of Indonesia wasn't exactly easy back then. But now times have changed, and today there are literally hundreds of Balinese gamelan ensembles in the US, in Japan, the UK, in Canada, in Germany, Holland, and dozens of other countries. So if you like what you're learning, it's very possible that there's a group somewhere near you, and we've included some supplemental resources and links that can help point you in the right direction. But even if that's not the case, and this turns out to be the closest you ever come to playing Balinese gamelan in the flesh, the rhythmic ideas and technical training you get here should be helpful to you in all your music making.